Hi everyone, Steph here. Welcome to a special kind of reading vlog. So this month you guys know that I am trying to read as many authors who are attending RARE that I already own on my Kindle, and I have decided that one way that I'm going to do this is by reading some anthology inclusions that the authors that are attending RARE have participated in, because I tend to collect anthologies mostly because they're charity anthologies and I like to support sort of the charity work that the anthologies are supporting. But as it turns out, a whole stack of authors that are attending RARE are also in anthologies that I already own. So I thought what this reading vlog could be is me reading some of these authors and just trying their stories. Now, I don't know how this is going to work for me because I'm a bit of a completionist, and normally when I read an anthology, because I do read them, I'd like to read everything in the anthology. So this is going to hurt my brain a little bit that I'm only going to be reading certain stories, which is how most people read these anthologies. But anyway, that's beside the point. I'm going to try it because all I'm trying to do is try out some authors, and then I'm going to tick them off on my list and give you guys my thoughts on them. And then I have my giant long list of full-length novels and novellas by authors that I'm going to be reading like in my normal regular reading. So yeah, I thought we would give this a shot. Tonight I'm going to be reading the Nightingale anthology, which was a charity anthology to raise money and awareness for the Ukraine last year. The authors that are attending RARE that are in this collection include Amo Jones, Claudia, I'm going to butcher this, is it Burgoa or Burgoa? I don't know, Burgoa. Yeah. Rebecca Zanetti, Sienna Snow, and Terri E. Lane. So I'm going to try and read these 5 stories now. It is Monday night. Depending on how long they are, I might read one of the other anthologies that only has 2 authors in it, but I also have some other reading for a video that I want to film for Little Bookish Teacher. So we'll see how long this takes me and if I have time to read another anthology tonight. That said, you will probably see me in this outfit this week while I'm reading the various anthologies, because this is my evening attire at the moment, and because I only wear it for like 2 hours before I go to bed, it doesn't really get dirty. So there may not be a lot of clothing variation in this vlog. And suddenly I'm realizing a flaw in my plan, because I've just opened the table of contents and the second short story or second story on this in this anthology is by Kate Canterbary, and I desperately want to read it, but she's not on my read list. See, this is why I like to read things all the way through, because there's also Katie Robert. Who else do I know in here? Ilsa Mann Mills. Oh, bonus epilogue from Boyfriend Bargain. Was that the one that I read? I can't remember. I do not have time to read an entire anthology. This is gonna hurt my soul. Someone send help. This was a bad idea. Like, it was a really bad idea. Okay, so I just read Playhouse by Amo Jones, which is sort of like a setup to another story, I'm assuming, because it definitely ends on a cliffhanger. It is about a woman called Evie who is quite wealthy. She has her own business and she is in quite a toxic relationship, and she and her husband have just gone away to their holiday house. And where the story leaves off, she has a girl who looks after her holiday home while she's away, and this girl's new partner or new boyfriend turns up, and you get the hint that this is going to be the story between Evie and this guy. So yeah, I don't really have any thoughts on the story because I probably don't intend to read the next part of it, but the writing style is solid, and you know, Amo Jones can write a husband character who I just totally loathe because he's a disgrace. All right, time to find the next book on this list. Okay, so story 2 was Our New Forever by Claudia Burgoa. I really should look these things up beforehand. And it's kind of like a prequel story again to the Baker's Creek Billionaire Brothers series, I believe. So this is about Layla and Pierce. They've recently adopted a son, but Layla is desperate to have a baby of her own as well. On top of that, she loves her adopted son, but she's been trying to get pregnant for ages. And this is kind of the little snapshot where she falls pregnant and lets her partner know. And it's actually very sweet because you can tell there's a lot of love between these 2 characters. Maybe I might pick up the series. Definitely more interested in this one than I was the previous one. So the next story was Protected by Rebecca Zanetti, who I know writes for romantic suspense and sort of sci-fi / paranormal romantic suspense. Anyway, this was that. It is part of the Dark Protector series, and it is a short story about Janie and Zane. This one of the ones that I've read so far is actually a complete little short story, which was nice. They are somewhere camping and Janie has a vision and that they're being attacked, and they are attacked. Zane is half demon, half vampire, I think. Anyway, there's a fight scene, there's a sex scene. It's a short story and it felt complete. And apparently it sort of preludes to another story by another character who's mentioned, who I think is Janie's brother, called Garrett. And that book was called Garrett's Destiny. That was fun. I can't remember if I've read Rebecca Zanetti before. I may have read like one book. Anyway, I really liked this one. It was fun, entertaining, fast-paced, and complete. Are we sensing a trend here? Okay, so I read The Rematch by Sienna Snow. Fun times. Every time I read the author Sienna Snow's name, I just think of Kiss of Snow, because Sienna in that book becomes Sienna Snow by the end of it. Can't help myself but laugh at that, because that's all I can think about. Anyway, The Rematch is a second chance between a character called Danica, who is a hacker, and Nick, who seems to be some kind of shady billionaire businessman. Anyway, they have clearly had something in the past, apparently in Dangerous King, according to the author's notes. And this is them coming to some kind of agreement that I'm not privy to, but they agree to in here. Anyway, they play a game of the card game War, but it's strip war, and I approve. That was a fun scene. Okay, so I'm going to read Terri E. Lane's story next. Terri E. Lane's story is called Every Piece of You, and it is a second chance meeting between Maddie and what's his name? Nate. No, not Nate. Nate is another character in the story. Barnes. So his name is Barnes. And they must have been like high school sweethearts. And then he was in an accident because he seems to have had a head injury and has struggled with memory ever since. And his parents stopped her from seeing him after the accident, and so she moved on and got married, and it was a horrible marriage because she got divorced, and now she's back in town after the divorce and they meet up at a barn dance. It's very short and very sweet. So this is all the rare authors in this anthology, but I think I'm going to read the Kate Canterbary one because I just want to read Kate Canterbary. She's not going to rare, but I'm going to read it anyway. Kate Canterbury's story is called Expansion. It's part of the Walsh series, which I have not read, but I do have on my list of things to read. And it's this is my favorite of the stories that I've read so far. Maybe because I just know Kate Canterbury's writing and I know that I love what she does. But it's a story about Will and Shannon, who are married. They've got kids. They're in a great relationship, and they're going on holiday to a private island because one of their friends is getting married. Both of them have more money than God, clearly. And it's the first time they've been on holiday without their kids. So they're making the most of it. Towards the end, there's this discussion around whether or not they're trying for a fourth child, and some discussion around the fact that Shannon's mother died during childbirth, so that's always something that's always on her mind. I just liked their dynamic. Kate Canterbury writes really great, strong, capable women who are with very alpha dominant men, but the power imbalance is never there. Like, their relationship is solid, and it's just really well written. So I'm glad that I read that because it was my favorite one that I've read so far. So, all right, I don't know if I'm going to read any more stories tonight. I am going to check out one of the anthologies to see how long they are, and then I shall decide. If not, I'll check in with you tomorrow. Hi everyone, happy Tuesday. We are back with another Try an Author Rare Edition via Anthology. This time I am going to be reading authors who participated in the anthology Descent, which was all around women's reproductive rights in the US last year. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's good to know I can count to, 6. There are 6 authors who are in this anthology. Brenna, Aubrey, Elle Thorpe, who I have read before, but I'll read the story in here. Elle Shaw, Mignon, Mykel, Nina Levine, and T. Gephart. I imagine that's how you say it. I'm just reading the foreword, which explains the purpose behind the anthology, and it's quite interesting actually. So there's some good information in there, and actually I don't know if you guys can see this, but this is quite good. They've got the potential trigger warnings and they've broken them down by trigger warning and then by story. So that is interesting. All right, but I've got to find the contents page and work this out. All right, I will check in when I know which story I'm reading first because I've got to sort through this. So I read Brenna Aubrey's book, which was Instant Chemistry, and it is about 2 teens who have joined the Air Force cadets and they're studying together, and they have a moment at a party one night where they offend each other, and then they end up as lab partners. And it's a very sweet story about how they end up falling for one another. Pretty simple concept, but it was very sweet. So I think next on the list is Elle Thorpe's story. So I'm gonna find it and then I'll tell you about it. Elle Thorpe's story was Storms and Sex Clubs, and it featured characters from all three of her Why Choose Saint View series. So there's Saint View High, Saint View Prison? Oh gosh. Saint View Prison and Saint View Psychos. So there were three main relationships. They're all three guys, one girl, and two of them have had kids. But this is essentially them just getting stuck inside Bliss and Nash's sex club in the middle of a storm. So they're all forced to stay there overnight. And yeah, this one was very, very steamy. But it was nice to revisit these characters because I've read the Saint View Prison and the Saint View Psychos trilogies, and I did enjoy them. The only reason I haven't read the Saint View High ones is because the word high is in there, which implies high school. I can't do it. But the rest of them I loved. All right, so next on the list is LK Shaw. So I will check in after I have read it. God damn it, there is another Kate Canterbary story in here. You know what I'm reading at the end of reading these authors. What is my life? Why has it come to this? So I couldn't find the LK Shaw story on here, so I don't know if there's one in here, but I did read Breakout by Mignon, I think, Mykel, and surprise, surprise, it was a hockey romance. Didn't know. Not that there was any hockey in it, because it is about a hockey player who plays for a San Diego team and is friends with basically the owners of the team and their kids who are all involved in the thing. Anyway, it's the holidays and he's been spending time with them, and he gets a call from his girlfriend who he has in secret. She is a flight attendant and she is also related to the Prescotts, which is why they haven't really told anyone. Anyway, short, steamy. I did like this one because there is a discussion in here around them telling people about their relationship and the fact that she's worried about them being in a formal relationship because she doesn't want to have kids, and she doesn't want him to feel the pressure of being in a relationship with her where she's not going to be able to give him something that he wants. But he points out that he's never really considered having kids and it's not necessarily a priority of his. He would rather have her, and I quite liked that conversation because it was very frank and very open and honest. So time to find the next book. I just read Marrying a Gala Girl by Nina Levine. I really liked this one. So this is obviously a follow-up from a full-length story because it was a wedding story between Charlize and Owen. And Owen is a billionaire. So I think the series is, what is it? Escape with a Billionaire. Yeah, it's just a fun scene leading up to the wedding over a period of a couple of months. Charlize is dealing with her mother and her future mother-in-law who are making her wedding decisions very difficult, but she also has a really awesome girl gang who are just making things so much simpler for her. And Owen is great. He's just absolutely enamored with her and has the dirtiest mouth around. I would consider picking up the series, which is good. I was going to say I have to find a way to make, you know, a note of which things I would like to try and read, but no, I've got this video. This video will be around for me to come back and go, oh, that's the one that I said I was going to read more of. Okay, I think I've got one more story to try in this anthology. And then Kate Canterbary. Oh, I'm such a child. Okay, I read, what's it called? Number One Prenup by T. Gephart, which I read at the end. She's an Australian author. She's based in Melbourne, which is where I live, so that's kind of cool. And this short story is attached to, must be attached to one of her other stories, but it doesn't say which one. And it is about a woman named Tia who is engaged to her fiance Eric, and he is a celebrity, and she is freaking out that if anything goes wrong, she doesn't want to take his money, so she organizes for a prenup. Like that, this one of all of the stories that I've read in this anthology is probably that feels the most incomplete. Like, it's still good, the writing was great and I like the characters, but we kind of don't get a sense of resolution, which I kind of got in some of the other ones, which was a little bit disappointing. But I would be interested to try some more of this author's writing at some point, just to see what a full-length story would be like. And because I'm me, I'm going to go back and read the Kate Canterbary story, because how could I not? How could I not? That one was super short. So Kate Canterbury's story is called Ink. It is about Riley and Alex, who are in her story preservation, which I don't know all that much about that one. It's just a couple who are in bed and he is drawing on her, like literally drawing on her with ink, and they're having a discussion around all of the reproduction laws and abortion laws in the States, and it's a conversation about consent and about trust between partners. There's a conversation about having kids, and I just kind of liked it for how open it is, a bit like the other story that I read earlier, where I just appreciate the fact that you can have characters having a frank conversation about contemporary real-world issues that are going on that affect women, and in fact Riley is the one leading the conversation, and he's the one going, well, what do you need me to do? What do you need me to do so that you feel comfortable and you feel safe? And I deeply appreciate that. Anyway, those are the stories from Descent, and I guess I will check in with you when I'm reading the next anthology. Okay guys, we are back with another try an author anthology edition, and this time we are going with Hell Hath No Fury, which was another one of the anthologies for reproductive rights. I'm actually going to be getting a physical copy, or in this case 2 physical copies of this anthology, because it was broken up into 2 volumes for its physical release, because bless her, Evie Mitchell has them and I was able to pre-order them through her. So I'll be picking them up at her table, which is great because it means that I'll have some things to actually go and get signed for some of these other authors if I enjoyed their stories. So the authors that are going to RARE that are in this anthology include Eden Summers, Ella Fields, Evie Mitchell, obviously I've read her before, but I'm going to read a short story because why not? Hannah Cowan, Piper Davenport. Serena Ackroyd is also in here, but she is an author who's on the potentially problematic author list because of hating the fact that people include trigger warnings. But yeah, we'll see how I go if I want to actually read her story. I'm going to try the others though. So I read Without Pause or Guilt by Eden Summers. Eden Summers. I should really just have like, no, I need like a stand in front of me with all my notes because I clearly can't remember anything. Eden Summers is an Australian author, and the writing was great, but to be honest, this just cemented the fact that I don't really like dark romance stories, or, well, I have my exceptions to them, but yeah. Alpha assholes who handcuff women to bed because they're pissed off that she went to see an old friend, not my thing. I think it's part of a series, and the heroine is a former FBI agent who has basically flipped sides and is engaged to some kind of criminal mastermind, and yeah, she went and saw an ex-friend of hers from the bureau, and her fiance lost it. Not quite my thing, but you know, well written, and I would consider reading other things by Eden Summers if I can find something that's not a dark romance like that. So now we are on to Ella Fields. I should have known by the title of this one that this was not going to work for me at all. So it's called Headmaster Taurin, and it's by Ella Fields. But I didn't even get to the Headmaster bit because the whole thing basically had an initiation vibe to it. So it's 2 18-year-olds who are at the very beginning kidnapped and taken to an initiation for a secret society that their families belong to. If you've read The Initiation, you know where this is going because it's exactly that. And the whole thing just felt icky and gross. Again, I don't do dark romance because no. I loathed The Initiation. Did not like this either, and this had younger characters. They're passing on that one, but that's okay because Evie Mitchell is next. My faith has been restored. So Evie Mitchell's story is a prequel to the Nameless Souls MC series, which is a post-pandemic, not COVID pandemic, but another pandemic, dystopian type story. And this follows Jules, who, like, this is right at the beginning of everything. She and her friends are out having a wake for a friend who's passed away from cancer, and she ends up hooking up with that friend's stepbrother, who is an MC member called Pope, and they've known each other for years, and it is steamy and kinky, and this is sort of the setup for the next Nameless Souls book that's coming out this year. So it's between Jules and Pope, and we're getting a full-length novel about them. So this is just sort of setting up their history because they do not end this on good terms at all. So I'm really looking forward to it now. Like, I'm very excited about the new book that's coming out. Hello again, friends. It is now Thursday night and I'm finally free because it is school holidays and I am hella tired. But you know what? We're just gonna keep on going with these anthologies because this video has to go up tomorrow morning because I planned this well. I was organized, clearly. What do I have left? I have the Hot anthology and the Heart to Heart anthology. So in Hot, there are only 2 authors, one of them being Eden Summers and J.A. Lowe. And then in Heart to Heart, there is Lane Hayes, Saxon James, who I already like, so I've read their books, and Sloane Kennedy. So we're going to start off with the hot anthology because those ones seem to be a little bit longer. They're about 100 page each, and then hopefully I'll jump into Heart to Heart. This one was called Reckless Sin, and it is a rock star and his girlfriend who is either a performer herself or she writes songs. A few years earlier they had a sex tape that went viral, and of course she was absolutely smashed by the media around the fact that there was a sex tape, despite the fact that he was the one who filmed it and it was consensual and someone stole it and stole his phone and released the footage, because of course that's the way that happened. Anyway, we're 3 years later and their relationship is like, they love each other, it's solid, but they're out of sync at the moment and they're trying to find their way back. And through a series of projects that they both work on separately for the first time in ages, they realize that they need to talk and communicate more. It also culminates in them going to a sex club, and there is an FFM scene in here as well. But I liked this one, and it's part of the Reckless Beat series, which must be the Rockstar series, and also links in the sex club is called The Vault, and apparently that's in the story Shot of Sin. I would be interested in, you know, checking either of those out. Okay, so JLO's story was called Frayed Strings, Lost Boys, and it is about a trio of rock stars who have lost the 4th member of their band who died in a car accident, and so they're grieving, and their record label or managers or whoever they are basically decide that enough's enough and that they need to get these guys some help. And so they end up organizing for them to have an accountability coach and to get out of LA and away from temptations, because they're basically doing drugs and drunk all the time. Evie is the accountability coach, and before she gets this job she ends up kissing one of the guys, Hendrix, who's in the band, and then finds out about the job. So basically any relationship stuff is off limits, which is totally fine with her because he's an asshole. And look, this is going to be one of those stories where you have a bad boy who gets redeemed, clearly, because this is a prequel preview thing to the book called Frayed Strings, which comes out, and what's the date? Tomorrow. The day that I'm filming this, on the 6th, comes out on the 7th of April. He just can't help himself but argue with her, and I'm not quite sure I like him at all, but the writing was good, so I kept reading it. Okay, so all that's left is to read 3 stories from the Heart to Heart volume 6 anthology. I don't know, I can't read it, it's teeny tiny on the screen. So this is a charity anthology, and the entire premise of all of these stories in the Heart to Heart anthology, because I've read Heart to Heart volume 3, is that it's based around a dating app called Heart to Heart, and so all of the stories relate back to that app. There are a stack of stories. Oh, there are a stack of stories in here, and there is one by Only James, so maybe I'm reading more than 3. We'll see how we go. So Lane Hayes's story was The London Chance, and this is about 2 guys who've met on the dating app. One of them is an American who lives in LA, the other is a Canadian who lives in London. Chance is traveling from LA to London to meet Roman for the first time, and their first date does not go very well at all, despite all the chemistry that they have when they're talking to each other on the app. It's not there in person, and so they're both really disappointed, and while drowning his sorrows, Chance goes out to karaoke, and Roman happens to end up there through a series of events. Chance is very, very drunk, can't find his way back to his hotel, so Roman ends up letting him stay in his spare room, and things go from there. It was very fun and very cute, and for a while I was convinced that Lane Hayes had to be Australian because there was a reference to Truly Madly Deeply by Savage Garden, and I don't really know anyone outside of Australia who would make that reference, but maybe that was a bigger song overseas than I thought it was. Anyway, flashback moments to my childhood. So Saxon James's story is up next, and we're going to read it now. Saxon James's story was The Anti-Wingman, and this is about 2 guys who meet on this app, and one of them is the kind of person who, as soon as he meets a guy, he ends up, you know, staying with them and dating, even though he's trying to just hook up, and he ends up in a relationship, and he's never been out of a relationship for longer than I think a period of like 3 weeks. And then the other one is a guy who is trying to find a relationship, and so their goals are completely opposite, because one just wants to hook up, one wants to find a relationship, and so they agree to, you know, work together to help each other find their goals but not fall in love with each other, but then they end up falling in love with each other. And it was just kind of endearingly sweet, because one of the characters is just this total sweetheart who is completely oblivious to things despite the fact that, you know, he's very intelligent. And sometimes you just want something a little bit fun like that. Plus, I keep getting distracted. I have one more story to read and I've got to stop looking at my phone. So my phone, it's gone over there. I keep stopping to look at my phone and it means I'm not reading. This is a symptom of how tired I am and my brain is just doing who knows what. And yes, I should go to bed, but I've got one more story to go and I'm going to read it because I want to be done. Final story done. And it was Sloane Kennedy's Story of the Choice. And this one is a boss-employee age gap relationship. There's also a bit of a power dynamic thing going on here. So you have Hudson, who owns and runs a ranch, and he is on a blind date to meet someone he's been talking to on the app. It turns out to be this young, very timid guy who has been hired as a ranch hand. And Hudson has previously noted that this guy is not great at controlling the animal, at all of the animals, but he's great with horses. He's been convinced to keep him on staff. But of course, when he realizes that Andrew is his blind date, he kind of freaks out because he doesn't want anyone to find out that he's gay. As it turns out, Andrew has his own kind of tragic past, and his parents were killed in a house fire and when Andrew was 15, and Andrew's had to raise his sister ever since then, and she was 7 at the time. And the two have kind of been on the run because he took her out of a foster care situation that was not good for her. And he's just trying to make ends meet. Like, it was actually a really lovely story. I would have liked this one as a full-length novel, I think, or at least like a full novella-length story rather than a short story, because I think there'd be some really cool things that you could do with character dynamics, but it was really well written. So I'm glad that we ended on a good note. I can't remember how many authors I tried. Let's count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 20 rare authors. Okay, and fair enough, some of them I have read before, and I did read 2 Kate Canterbary stories. I did not read the other extra stories in the other ones that I should have. But what I'm thinking is I am going to put a poll up, possibly in the video if I can get this many anthologies on the list. And I might do another sort of dedicated anthology reading vlog where I read through one of the whole anthologies, because I do like doing that, because I think some of these anthologies do have a common thread through them and I'd like doing that. Also, my completionist self just hates having these unfinished books sitting on my Kindle, and I can't just mark them as read because I haven't read them, and I can't mark them as unread because I've started reading them, so I'm going to be sitting there as currently reading until I read them. So I'm going to pop a poll up somewhere, and if it's not on the screen in the cards, I will do something in the comments and you can tell me which anthology you think I should read. So thank you for joining me on this very weird, random, I should not vlog in the last week of term because chaos clearly ensues and I lose the plot. But anyway, it's done now. So that's 20 authors on my rare list, and we can resume our regularly scheduled reading program. All right, thank you very much for watching and putting up with this chaos. I hope that wherever you are in the world you're doing well and staying safe and healthy, and I will see you in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye everyone.